She wanted to have a Gucci business in Naples. Today I'm going to tell you about the revenge of an ex-wife, the Gucci case, the heir to a fashion empire. It was March 27, 1995 when Maurizio Gucci, the last heir of the Italian dynasty to run the luxury brand, a hitman on the steps of his Milan office, took his life. He had just managed to cross the street and greet the doorman of the building on Palestro Street, a few meters from the fashion district, when he received the 3 fatal shots in the back. He was wearing an impeccable suit and loafers with that classic double G symbol. He was 46 years old and had sold his stake in the firm founded by his grandfather Guccio to an Arab financial company 2 years ago after a tough and bitter family dispute. There were few family members at his funeral, which took place 26 years ago. In the videos from that day, you can see his ex-wife Patricia Reggiani Martinelli. Surrounded by the couple's daughters Alexandra and Allegra, she is in mourning, moved, who is still known as Lady Gucci. She lifts her veil to dry her tears. Few suspected then that 3 years later, in '98, Reggiani would be sentenced to 29 years in prison for ordering the life of her ex-husband to be taken. The press would then start calling her the Black Widow. And yes, again, the Gucci crime had all the elements to intrigue Italian society from the beginning. A sensational story of crime, madness, glamour, and greed. But above all, it's one of those tragic stories that start as a fairy tale. Who is that goddess in the red dress who looks like Elizabeth Taylor? Maurizio Gucci was moved as soon as he saw Patricia Reggiani's violet eyes. At a party in the late '60s, she didn't care that he was the coveted heir to a fashion empire. He looked at me like a wounded fish. He fell hopelessly in love with me, but I was the Queen of Milan. He had to go slow with me. Patricia would tell the New York Times much later. They were very different. Born on the outskirts of Milan, Patricia was the daughter of a waitress married to a much older man. He had made a fortune in the transportation business. They were not high society, but they were rich, and her father spoiled her with fur coats, necklaces, and luxury cars. By the age of 20, she had managed to make her way into the elite circuits thanks to her beauty, style, and of course, her money. For Rodolfo, Maurizio's father, none of these qualities were enough to accept Patricia. Patricia, as the girlfriend, and even less as the wife of his only son. He considered her a social climber. I was exciting and different, Patricia recalled in an interview with The Guardian. The Guccis were from Florence, so Maurizio was considered an outsider in Milan. His mother had died when he was 5 years old, and his father had always overprotected him. In the past, he maintained balance. Patricia, she says she felt free. At first, I didn't think much of him. He seemed like a shy boy with crooked teeth. That's what Patricia said, while she had other suitors. But he pursued her with patience and millions at his disposal to win her over. I believe the millions mattered more than the crooked teeth and patience. Patricia was so used to flaunting her wealth that when a boyfriend came to pick her up in an economy car, she thought he was a loser. The now Black Widow is famous for having once said, "I'd rather cry in a Rolls Royce than be happy on a bicycle." With her, Maurizio learned the ostentatious luxury that they made their own brand. They got married in '72 when they were both 24 years old and against the opinion of the Guccis. Rodolfo would finally soften. With the arrival of his first granddaughter, Alexandra, it was Patricia who then gave me to ensure that the father attended the baptism and could see that she really loved Maurizio. Well, at least this is what she said and continues to say. Again, close to her son, she bought several properties for the couple, including an 840 square meter penthouse in the Olympic Tower in New York on Fifth Avenue. For the extravagant, in the '70s, this lifestyle of the young couple would surprise the press. These were the years when Patricia spent more than $10,000 a month just on orchids. The Guccis were famous for their one-color themed parties, where the clothes, the decoration, and even the food were monochromatic. And they often had among their guests their friend Jackie Onassis. "We had a lot of fun," Patricia said. Patricia to The Guardian. "We were a spectacular couple, and we had a spectacular life." The Black Widow broke down, remembering those parties where her favorite color was orange. "It still hurts to think about that," he said. But according to Reggiani, the enchantment suddenly broke with the death of Rodolfo Gucci in '83. Maurizio, who had started working at the company at 15, had inherited 50%, and he began to act as if she no longer had to take care of anything or anyone. This, in Patricia's words, went crazy. Until that moment, she advised him on all matters of the brand. But now he wanted to be the best, and he stopped listening to me. These were also words from the ex. In '85, the Gucci heir told his wife he was going on a short business trip to Florence and never came back. But after 13 years of marriage, he had started a relationship with a younger woman, and she complained on an Italian program saying he didn't even have the courage to tell his wife, who found out from the family doctor that he wouldn't be coming back. Patricia said this. With 2 little daughters, Patricia became filled with resentment. She couldn't believe that she had the suitcases ready. That's what Patricia expressed. But even though they separated, family came first, and she would still be Lady Gucci. The legal battle took almost a decade until '91, when they signed the divorce. As part of the agreement, she kept custody of Alexandra and Allegra, and the equivalent of €1 million annually. But Patricia was not satisfied. She was bothered by how her ex managed the firm, and that he had set her aside for an immigrant. In a report from that time, she bitterly recalls that Maurizio told her, the Gucci brand had lost prestige by overselling the license of its famous monogram and mass-producing its canvas handbags. Maurizio planned to regain the glory afterwards, but he couldn't. He aimed at the artisan leather goods with which his grandfather Gucci had made fashion history since 1922. The loafers, wallets, and gloves of the WG had become iconic. For years, Maurizio plotted against his uncle Aldo and his cousins to take over their half of the shares, until he succeeded with the help of the Arab financier Investcorp. But even though he took the assistance, the correct decision to hire designer Tom Ford at the helm of creative direction would eventually return an unthinkable glamour to Gucci that he certainly never got to see. Reggiani was right in that, as president, Maurizio was a terrible administrator and did not earn enough to execute his ideas. With his personal fortune faltering in '93, he was forced to sell the entirety of the brand to Investcorp for about $200 million. The family's fashion legacy had ended with this. She was angry with him for many reasons at that time, Reggiani told The Guardian. But above all for this. Losing the family business, that was stupid. That was a big mistake. She was filled with rage, and there was nothing she could do. A year before Reggiani became the brand's president, the brand's president became the brand's president. Earlier in '92, she had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and the father of her daughters had not offered her any support through that risky surgery. But selling her brand was even worse than the disease. He shouldn't have done that to me. That's what Patricia expressed. Another thing that disturbed her was seeing her ex-husband with a new woman, Paola Franchi. He had been living with her and their 11-year-old son Charlie for 5 years on the morning they took his life. They were times of fights and accusations. In a phone conversation that was revealed during the trial, she tells him, "You've reached the point where your daughters despise you. They don't want to see you anymore to forget the trauma. You're a deformed grain, a painful appendix we want to forget. For you, hell is yet to come." When she found out Maurizio intended to remarry, she began to think about taking his life. She couldn't stand the idea of there being another Lady Gucci. In a conversation with a media outlet, she commented, "I asked everyone, even the butcher, isn't there anyone brave enough to take my husband's life?" And then the woman who spent 18 years in jail explains, "I have only one flaw. I don't even know how to look at a gun. I couldn't do it alone, so I didn't even have time for her to arrive, not even her lifestyle." That's how the Neapolitan psychic Pina Auriemma, whom Patricia had met on the island of Chia 20 years earlier, came into the scene. She was the one who contacted the other 3 men convicted of the crime: the bricklayer Benedetto Ciraulo, the actual perpetrator, Horatio Carboni, a compulsive gambler devastated by debts, who was the assistant, and Ivano Savioni, a caretaker at a temporary shelter and organizer. But Maurizio had many enemies, and at first the police suspected that his attacker must be connected with his disputes with the rest of the Gucci family, or with his latest businesses, like the casino in Switzerland, where he planned to invest a significant amount of money. On the other hand, Patricia didn't even hide her spite. Just a few months after his death, she told Vanity Fair that her ex-husband had been a simple thing called Gucci that needed to be washed and dressed weekly. A day after the crime, Paola Franchi received an eviction order from Reggiani to immediately leave the penthouse she shared with Maurizio. Franchi noted with horror that it was dated. On March 27 at 11 a.m., less than 3 hours after Gucci's death, Patricia then moved with her daughters to the Corso Venice apartment, where she lived for the next 2 years, until one of her accomplices boasted about the crime to the wrong person. On the early morning of January 31, 97, following police suspicions, she had murdered the woman's wife. The Lombardy police arrested Gucci's widow. Everything indicated that the crime that had shaken Milan's high society was going to turn into another unsolved case. When investigators asked her if she knew why they were arresting her, she coldly replied, "Yes, for the murder of my husband." Before leaving, she grabbed all her jewelry and put on a fur coat. A detective advised her not to take them to jail, but she insisted and said, "My jewelry and my coat go wherever I go." Her lawyers did not deny that Bellani often spoke of her desire to see her ex dead. She had told it to anyone who wanted to listen. What they sought was to incriminate the magician Pina for having given in to her friend's obsession by hiring some thugs. However, even an entry in her diary on the day of Guccio's crime with the word paradise was added to the evidence against the widow. On another page it read, "There is no crime that money cannot buy." At the trial, there were no members of the Gucci family facing all their relatives. Maurizio's memory was not claimed by them. "All the Gucci males are equal to Morales," that's what Pina said. At that time, to the New York Times, Jennifer Gucci, ex of his cousin Paolo, "They are multi-millionaire playboys, and nobody has too much compassion for them." Patricia was sentenced in '98 and served almost 18 years of her sentence in San Victor prison. He called it Victor's residence, or the Victor residence. She says, "Today at 72 years old, for me, those were years of immense peace." He was sleeping. "I would bathe, go down to the garden, and I had a special treatment." Among her privileges, she was allowed to have a pet, her ferret Bambi, who incidentally died when another inmate sat on him, and to take care of her plants. She felt so good that she rejected her first offer of parole in 2011 because it required her to have a job. The mere idea horrified her. "I've never worked in my life. I intend to start now," that's what she told her lawyer. In 2014, she changed her mind and accepted a job as a stylist at the Milanese jewelry firm Bossa. It was a job she could do quite naturally and felt up to her level, combining jewelry with clothes and overseeing the design of a line of handbags. On her first day of work, the paparazzi surprised her with a question. Why? Why did she hire a hitman to take Maurizio's life? Why didn't you shoot him yourself? The woman had always maintained her innocence and that her friend had deceived her. But that time the cameras found her reckless and mocking, and she said, "My sight is not so good. I didn't want to miss." She left her job when she regained her freedom in 2016, although her daughters do not speak to her and appealed the measure in court. It's them. As Maurizio's heirs, they are the ones who must pay her €1 million annually, according to what was agreed in the divorce trial. Also another 18 million for each year she spent in prison. After the death of Patricia's mother, and with no contact with her daughters, not even knowing her grandchildren, she lives alone with her little bird, I think it's a macaw, and her little white dog. with some collaborators who help her manage her estate. She has a clear conscience, or at least that's what she says. I paid what I owed for having ordered the life of my ex-husband to be taken, no more, no less. Behind the huge sunglasses, some people usually recognize her by her ostentatious jewelry and the exotic bird I was telling you about on her shoulder. Shopping on Maurizio's Fifth Avenue, Milan. She also claimed that although she has no regrets about what she did, Gucci was her only true love. If I saw him again, I would tell him that I love him because he is the person who mattered most to me in life. What would he respond? I think he would say that the feeling was not reciprocated. Finally, a movie is going to be released that will premiere on November 26, 2021, and will star Lady Gaga, who will portray Patricia Reggiani. Maurizio Gucci will be played by actor Adam Driver. Also starring will be British actor Jeremy Irons, who will portray Rodolfo Gucci. Al Pacino as Aldo Gucci and Gucci fanatic Jared Leto as Paolo Gucci, the film's embodiment, and Aldo's son, who from what I've seen is going to be about this story I just told you. If you liked this video, don't forget to follow me on my social networks and on my secondary YouTube channel as Did You Know by Pepe Mystery. My name is Pepe Cerecero and this is Pepe Mystery.